Good morning, traders and investors. Steve Gans here, and welcome to the weekend update for February 2nd, 2025. Now, anything I'm going to cover today, there's a big question mark on, given all of the tariff battles that are currently being waged here over the weekend. I think those will certainly have some negative impact on the markets, largely because tariffs are likely going to increase the cost of doing business for many businesses and consumers as well. Cost of consumer goods that we routinely buy, where items are brought in from other countries, those prices could potentially go up by that 25%. So we don't really know how that's all going to play out right now. So it's going to be kind of a wait and see. I'm going to analyze our markets based on what we know right now, based on what the chart patterns look like right now. But that could change dramatically here Monday, Tuesday, etc., as we go further in the week. We're holding up really well during earnings season. A lot of earnings have come out. Earnings have gone fairly well in most cases. So we're not seeing any real negative impact from an earnings standpoint. Now, let me get my pencil out here and draw some chart lines. So if we look at the SPX, we can see here that we pretty much came back and we hit the highs that we had here a week or so ago. We've now come up to those highs. We've bounced off them twice. We bounced off here, went lower, bounced off here, went lower. That said, the good news is we had been in a bit of a downtrending channel here, and we broke that a week or so ago. That's all good news. That's bullish in nature. The other thing is that our up days, at least so far, have been on higher volume. That also tends to be a little bit of a bullish signal. But we can see on Friday, we were looking really strong on Friday. Then when the tariff news came out, markets started selling off, and it sold off with a little more volume than I would like to see. If this continues on Monday, which I think it might, we're looking at having bars that may very well come down to this support line right here over the next couple of days, and then we'll have to see if that holds or not. We're going to have to see what kind of volume is associated with that. If that volume picks up considerably too, if we just come to the bottom of the channel to this prior support line, right there's a pretty good support area in that 5,900 range. If we drop down through that and through this line here, we're looking at a fairly significant potential decline at that point from my perspective. All of this, of course, can change on a dime. Let's say that the tariff news goes in place. Companies determine that they're going to be impacted negatively, and they start reporting that. Therefore, companies are going to be less profitable. People are likely to start selling out of their stock, which is going to drive this down. And let's say we do break down here somehow, and then all of a sudden, President Trump decides, ooh, this is hurting the market more than I'd like, or some agreement gets reached and the tariff situation gets back down on both sides. That could instantly rocket us back up. Bottom line is we're in for a volatile couple of weeks, most likely. Now, as we look at volatility, let's come in and take a look at the VIX, the volatility index, because that's another reading, if you will, that kind of helps us understand what's happening in the markets. Right now, volatility, while it spiked up a little bit on Friday, still pretty darn low. So that's a good thing from a standpoint of not a lot of fear came into the market on Friday. There weren't lots of people out there buying insurance on their portfolios. So we're going to have to see what happens with this on Monday. My expectation is as this rhetoric ramps up on both sides of the equation, volatility is likely to spike up a bit here. So need to be watching for that. That volatility spikes up, that thing gets up into here somewhere, then we're likely to get more of a sell-off happening. So let's take a look also at RUT. So of course, the Russell 2000 index, that tends to consist a little more of small cap companies, banks, a lot of banks make up the RUT, etc. I think they're less likely to be impacted by all of this, all of the issues that are going to go on with tariffs. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how Russell holds up. My expectation is that Russell might come off a little bit with the rest of the market, but I just don't think that the Russell is going to be impacted as much as the S&P 500 is likely to be impacted. Again, because the Russell is smaller cap companies, many of those smaller cap companies only have exposure here within the U.S. Of course, a contingent of them rely on parts maybe from outside the U.S., etc., so they could have some impact. But a lot of these are banks, financial institutions, things along those lines, and I don't know that the tariffs will have a major impact on those entities' P&Ls at the end of the day. And if their P&L isn't negatively impacted, their stock price probably won't be negatively impacted either. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Russell does hold up here. And I also want to take a look at the volatility of the Russell, the RVX, and see what that's looking like. Similar story here. There was a little bit of a bump in volatility, but again, not real huge at this point. So it's going to be, again, interesting to watch this develop over the week. I urge everybody to pay close attention to the volatility index of the Russell, of the S&P 500, and of course, pay attention to those indexes and see how those two kind of play back and forth over the week as well. My expectation is we're going to see higher volatility in the S&P 500. We're probably going to see a little more sell-off in the S&P 500 percentage-wise than what we're likely to see in the Russell. And we'll see if that bears out. We'll have to pay attention to that. So I'd like to ask a quick favor of everyone at this point. If you find this content to be of interest, of value, please like, subscribe. Feel free to give me any comments down below as well. If there's certain things that you might like to see answered, put them in there. If I can do, I'll make sure that I do that in the future. I do look at all of those comments, and I very much appreciate feedback. So that's going to wrap up the market review for this week.